The Evermore podcast is now sponsored by WFST Total Compliance. WFST provides fire safety requirements UK-wide to prepare you and your employees should the worst happen. Do what you do best and visit wfst.co.uk today. Enjoy the episode.
Good evening, welcome to the Evermore YouTube channel. We're back here tonight with another Wednesday night live broadcast. Chris is skiving this week, so unfortunately in the group I've drawn the short straw. So I'll be your host for this evening. I must have been pissed when I agreed to that. But the good thing about being host is if anybody refers to my grey hair or Philip Scarfield, I can kick us off. Simon, I'm aiming that one at you before we even start.
Barely said a word. Barely.
Tonight I'm joined by Mark. I'm joined by Simon, who looks, I have to say, a little bit cooler than she did the last time she joined the call when she looked like she was in Siberia. And we're also joined by Ash, who's a Evermore YouTube podcast virgin. Welcome, guys. How are we all?
Good, thank you, mate.
All right, before we get stuck in, quick reminder to anybody watching for the first time, please consider subscribing to the channel if you haven't already done so. Currently, we're running at around about 2,500, just over 2,500 subscribers, I think. Is that correct, Mark? 2,000?
Yeah, heading up 2,600 now, so we're slowly getting there.
Okay, so as Chris would say, if you haven't already, smash the like button. We get 2 live shows a week, one on a Monday, What's Going On with Mark and Chris, and we get the Wednesday night podcast. You also get endless rants from Chris about all football-related matters, and often one about GMB and the like. So remember, we are live, so feel free to drop into the comments. Let us have your thoughts on what we're discussing and what have you. So let's stick in. Let's get stuck in. Sorry, let's stick in. You see, I'm new to this malarkey, I tell you. Let's get stuck in anyway. Friday night, saw me personally lose my voice. I'm down by the banks of the River Trent as Eddie's Mags secured a crucial 2-0 victory to send us into the national break in good spirits. Brilliant result. Post-match, though, there was only really one man receiving all of the praise. So we're going to start tonight with the man of the moment, our striker from Sweden. So I'm going to start with you, Ash, virgin for the podcast. If you could just tell us what you reckoned to Isak's performance on Friday and go into a little bit about what you think to his time at Newcastle so far.
You know what? Somebody said to me last night that he's going to be our Erling Haaland, which I thought was maybe a bit of a step too far, but he's been phenomenal. The last 2 games, by far our best player. Deserved both goals. Deserved to have his assist stand for Elliot Anderson, which I'm sure we've discussed plenty. But yeah, 63 million is looking like a bargain based on the last 2 performances he's done for us.
I would say so. When you think that when we bought him, I think there was a perception amongst rival clubs that he was a bit of a panic buy. I was a little bit concerned, I'll be honest with you, about the physicality of the Premier League, but looking so far so good. What do you think, Simon?
Yeah, I absolutely love him. I think from the moment he's put foot onto pitch, I am tired, so just bear with me when words. It's not been a great day today.
It's been a long day, as PK would say.
Sorry. So in terms of Isak, I think from his very first appearance, that's, for us, he's been phenomenal. I can't speak. His movement has been sublime. And he's just needed to get confidence. It's finally arrived, but he's just amazing. I think he's so young, he's so fresh, and he's going to be amazing. He needs the number 9.
23-year-old, and we've got him on a 5-year contract. He's contracted to June 2028, which I think transfer market apparently valued him at 30 million last summer, just before we signed him. He's now valued at 50, so he's obviously done something right since he joined us. Mark, your thoughts on him?
He's been tremendous. I mean, he's got what, 6 goals in, is it 10 appearances now? 7 starts. He's played just under 7 games in terms of his 90s played. He's already equaled the number of league goals this season that he scored for Sociedad last season. He's just been exceptional, and he gives you so much more in an attacking threat than Wilson has done over sort of the last few months, really. He's hungry to impress. He's quick. He's got brilliant feet. He's better in the air than a lot of people I think have given him credit for. The header last week was exceptional. And his performance again on Friday night was just brilliant. And I think completely we talked about it at length, but robbed of his assist. But yeah, he's been a cracking buy, and I think 63 million. It sort of looked a lot, but for a 23-year-old that's got loads and loads of time ahead of him, and the biggest praise you can get is from Zlatan himself, who's think from what he said sort of over sort of recent weeks is that he's the future, he's the new Zlatan as such. So you can't get much higher praise than that, can you?
No, I mean, from a goals point of view, he's averaging, I think, for Sweden, for example, he made his debut when he was 17. For Sweden, he's 1 in 4 internationals. He got 37 appearances and 9 goals, so just short of 1 in 4, which isn't bad when you think, as I say, he's only 23 at the start of his career. At Sociedad, I think he was 1 in 3. 44 goals in 132 games for Sociedad, and when you take into account his last season there, he scored 6. He had by his record a relatively poor season. I think for me, what he gives us a totally different option to Wilson. I don't think Wilson's finished yet. He's gone through a really difficult period at the minute, but he gives us a totally different option. Whereas Wilson's more of a target man. I think Isak's more than capable of playing across the line, either side, through the middle. I think, as I say, when he first arrived, I was a little bit concerned about his physicality, but he seems to be getting to grips with the Premier League. And let's be honest, we've got some big arse centre halves in that division, and he is going to get buffeted about and what have you. But he seems to be getting to grips with it. I mean, he missed 13 games as well. He missed 11 league games on the spin, and he missed 2 League Cup games as well. I'd be interested to know where we were in the league and what a points total would have been had we had him as an option for those 13 games. Because I think, as I say, whether he's been brought on as a sub or whether he's been playing from the start, he looks like a different option that's going to cause people problems and give people headaches. On the subject of his position, Ash, I'll come to you again. Where do you think going forward Isak's best position is going to be for us?
I always thought that on the left was going to be his best position, but now I think through the middle. If you look at the Wolves game, he actually made Maxi look good. Maxi was finding passes for him that he wouldn't have been able to play if Wilson was there. So he's opening up defences a lot more than Wilson does. But I will say that I would like to see Wilson and Isak playing together, and I think to do that, you're probably going to have to move Isak out to the left. Which he did do towards the back end of the first half against Forest, so he can do it, and that's where he got his goal from, obviously. But I don't know. I think through the middle, he's a number 9, like Simon said. He needs that number 9 shirt. He's the future.
But if you look at it, the goal he created for Joe Linton down at Southampton, I know Simon, you were there, where he's literally stood the fullback at the centre half, whatever it was, on the touchline, left him for dead at the Etihad the other week. I think it was Ake, who he made an absolute fool of on the touchline. It makes you think, is his strongest position playing through the middle? Because it's very, very tricky, gets out of really, really tight spaces, sometimes with ease by the looks of it. Simon, what do you reckon in terms of his best position?
I think, given how he's performing, and I think the players look so confident on Friday night, it was a different set of players. The confidence in all of them, the way they played. So I think with Isak, you give him the freedom, because someone's put a comment in to say, Gibbo, he can play all three positions and he does it well. His movement is amazing. He, you know, you blink and you miss him because he's constantly not in the same place. And I think if you take that freedom away from him, he's not going to score. So I think while he's flourishing, just let him play football.
I see the comment from our Lord and Master, Mr. Curry, there. If you just bring that one back up for us, Mark. Reminds me of Henry.
Back off! I'm talking about his movement all the time.
I've heard about a number of people compare what they've seen from Isak in the last few weeks to Thierry Henry when he first came into the Premier League. That's some benchmark to it's a fair bit of pressure being put on a 23-year-old shoulders. But listen, if he turns out to be half the player for us that Thierry Henry was at Arsenal, I'd be over. I mean, I've got a question for you, Mark. I'm going to come to you. One thing I've heard battered around regularly is, can he play with Wilson? Can they play together? Can they play as a pair?
It is a good question. I would suspect yes, because I think he's good enough. Like people have said, he's good enough to play across the front line, so he can. And we've seen him drop into that gap in behind the striker. He did that when he came on against Fulham. He came in as sort of almost a number 10, where he could pick the ball up and drive then forward and bring others into it. I don't see there being a reason why he can't. I don't think it's the long-term option, but it certainly gives you a change of, a mid-game change of direction if things aren't working. He can definitely do that. The Henry comment, I quite like. Remember that Henry started as a wide player as well, and just how well that Isak can play, either side. We've seen what he can do from the left. We saw what he could do on the right-hand side as well. It was against Southampton, wasn't it? And that ability to play from wide and have the finishing ability, then it does have shades of Henry. He's not there yet, obviously, but he does have shades of him. And I think if you can bring that level of quality in and play with a finisher like Wilson as well, it could be a match made in heaven if you can get them working together.
Do we not run the risk of these Thierry Henry comparisons of building him up just so his fall from grace is potentially a bit high? As I say, it's some comparison to be making after 10 games he's played in the Premier League?
Yeah, it is. I mean, that's always the way. It's almost a comment you hate, isn't it? Because you hate to then compare him to some of the greats that have gone on the past. You hear it all the time for people, don't you? They're the next A, B, C, or D. And 99.9% of the time, they turn out nothing like them. So you do worry that you build them up to a point, but his early showing it shows that he is going to be a very, very special player in black and white.
Yeah, I mean, one thing I would say, a surprising stat I saw, I think it was on Sky Sports the other day, in terms of minutes per goal this season. He's at 104 minutes per goal, which is second only to the robot at the Etihad, Haaland. 104 minutes per goal, some going. I mean, let's hope he can carry it on for the rest of the season. I know we're going to talk about the international break and some of our players who are away on international duty a little bit later, but just keep everything crossed that the bloke comes back in one piece, unlike the last time he went away with Sweden, because that would just be a killer if he came back with half an injury, even what you call it, slightly injured. Yeah, Gibbert's a good point. They played pretty well together against Fulham. I think Wilson set up Isak for the last-minute winner. But I think what I would say in relation to that, it was the last 15 minutes, last 20 minutes, I think, Simon, you'd have been there. I think we were chasing a result. We were drawing 0-0. And I think Eddie was chasing the game. So I think it was a last resort when he threw them on together. I don't know whether I would expect to see them start together anytime soon in terms of starting a match. Do you think? Would you?
Me?
Would you? Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Get Chris back. Sorry, I'm joking. Sorry, I am nice to before people start complaining. To be honest, I think I don't know.
Right, okay.
I wouldn't play them together. No. Right. We've got a run of games in April that's far too many in a short period of time, what you need to think about is player fatigue. Isak is playing with Sweden. So again, he's not going to get the rest that the other players are going to have. So I think if we're trying to get as many points as we can so we can get to Europe, then I would be thinking tactically about my players and, you know, and their fitness and can they manage. And I wouldn't want to waste, I wouldn't do it.
Also at Forest on Friday night, there was a lot of rare reviews about another young player wearing the blue of Newcastle. Title was Boy Wonder Steps Up, that Chris gave us earlier on today. And obviously we're talking about a young lad called Elliot Anderson. I think it's fair to say Anderson had his best game in a Newcastle shirt on Friday night. Simon, what's your take on his performance on Friday?
Maradona.
Jordi Maradona, get it right.
Yeah, he deserved that goal. I think Eddie's been very clever with Elliot. He slowly brought him into the team, you know, had him on the bench, got him some game time. And in terms of Friday, he was just a beast, wasn't he?
He was.
He was, yeah. He got the assistant. No, did he get the assist? Anyways, but no, he's phenomenal. I think there's whether you would start him every game is another thing because we will get Joe Linton back. But I think I would keep him with the Newcastle squad so we don't lose and not send him out on loan next season. He can you tell I'm tired? I'm so sorry.
I think for me it was everything that Maxi wasn't in the first half. I know there was talk of Maxi being injured after the game. I don't know whether that was how protecting Maxi from a bit of criticism or not. But he was direct. He worked hard. He looked a threat all the time. I mean, let's be honest. There's no way on the face of the earth Maxi's winning that header against. Was it? I can't remember who the fullback was. There's no way on the face of the earth Maxi's winning that header. And he just was a totally different proposition for their fullback to face in the second half compared to the first. One thing I did notice about him, and don't take this in any way, shape, or form in the wrong way. At the end of the match, when the players were celebrating in front of the end, he looked absolutely ripped. He looked absolutely huge. He was massive. He was. And I don't know if that's something that they worked on over the course of the season to try and build him up, because I watched him at the Palace League Cup game about 4 months ago. I think it was November. And I don't know if any of you were there, but he was really, really poor. He looked like a boy in a man's league against Crystal Palace in the League Cup game earlier this season.
A beast at Tranmere.
As I say, but again, at home against Palace, as I say, I don't think he turned up, but he wasn't the only player that didn't turn up against Palace. I mean, you talked about you'd keep him, Simon. Would you keep him next season, or would you be looking to learn him out and get him some experience?
I would keep him. I think the loan moves haven't been working out. And I say that because we haven't got that many players out on loan. Don't class Jeff Hendrick as a player, even though he's got a call up for Ireland. But Koal, just his situation at Hearts. And for me, I don't want players going out to a team that they're not going to get any game time, because what's the point? So I would keep him.
I think all of our loan players are in really safe hands with Shola Amiabi, are they not?
Shola's as good at loaning players out as he was at playing football, by the looks of it.
What are your thoughts, Ash? Would you learn a keep?
No, I'm in camp keep him. I know there's a lot of championship clubs sniffing about, but I think he's above that level now, and he needs to be given a decent run in the first team. I don't think we should be relying on him by any stretch yet, but just throwing him in at big parts now, it needs to grow on a little bit more to the point where he's getting a good run of minutes. Maybe start him in the next couple and see how he gets on. I know he's been a bit hit and miss when we have started him in the past, but he's definitely got the potential. We saw that on Friday. He was absolutely brilliant. He's clearly better than St. Maximin in the fact that he actually cares. He'll put his body on the line. He gets involved. He's got not as many tricks as St Maximin, but he uses them better, if you know what I mean. Where St Maximin always seems to want to go on that one person more. Anderson will play the pass when it needs to be played. So yeah, I think definitely keep him, give him a good run, see what we can get out of him, and then assess in January.
Quite a bit of feedback there from someone.
Someone in the washing machine. What's going on here?
One thing I would say about Anderson is he's obviously, whenever he's playing, he's going to get goals. I mean, all competitions, I was looking at his stats earlier, all competitions since he came through to the under-21s at Newcastle, he's 94 games, 31 goals. So that's almost 1 in 3 for an attacking midfielder, which is it's not a bad return. Obviously, a lot of those goals were in games at under-21 level. I mean, last season at Bristol Rovers, I think if you speak to any Bristol Rovers fan, he is probably responsible for them being promoted to League One. He played 21 games, scored 8 goals, got 5 assists. In the last game of the season where they needed to beat Scunthorpe 7-0, he scored 1 and made 2. And that's, I think it was the Bristol Rovers fans who christened him the Geordie Maradona. Obviously, we've adopted that, and rightly so. But I've got a question for Mark. What do you think? Will Elliot Anderson still be a Newcastle player in 5 years' time?
5 years, bloody hell. Yeah, I think he probably will. I think he gets a good grounding over the next couple of years. I tend to agree with the comments in saying that I don't think he should be loaned out, because I think he's found that level now where he can come in and make a difference. I think some of the comments that have come in about him are absolutely spot on. Yeah, I mean, we couldn't be more angry with the VAR decision on Friday night. Stu's absolutely right. I mean, one of the things I did notice from Anderson was, and you touched on sort of what he looks like now, and Davey said it there, is just how up for the fight he was. Forest were really physical, and it looked like Maxi doesn't like that at all. He wants to run. He wants to be able to, with the ball at his feet, run at players, a bit like he did it against Wolves, where they gave him a little bit of time just to have the ball. He's not going to get that against a side like Forest, who are looking to do the dirty work. They're looking to kick them. They're looking to push them all over. He's not going to get it. And I think that I think Chris was quite critical of him when he did his post-match, and probably took a little bit of flack for it. But that was before Eddie Howard said that he was feeling his hamstring. Whether that's a little bit of a smokescreen to give him a little bit of a break from criticism, I don't know. But if he was feeling his hamstring pre-game or early in the game, why is he still on the field? Why wasn't he hooked earlier? Because we've seen with Wilson, you don't risk things like that. You pull him off straight away. Get him off the field. Get him rested, and get him back to fitness. But I think Anderson's come in and shown that he was exceptional, and he's up for the fight. He's got the quality there. It allowed him to, he presses well. I think his early moments against Liverpool, he showed that he was willing to do that hard work and press and push the defenders back. It was unfortunate for him that he then was the sacrificial lamb, wasn't he, when Pope had his moment of madness. But I do think he's got a decade ahead of him at the club if he keeps putting in the graft, and he's shown he has. And I think Simon's right. I think Eddie's played him pretty well. He's had 12 appearances this season. His one start was a non-starter really against Liverpool, but I think he will get some more chances in that. And yeah, I think 5 years' time, to come back to the original question, because that was a long-winded way of getting around to it. I think he probably is one of the players that you have built around in that sort of midfield 3 or 5 or whatever sort of formation you're in that point there. He's an integral part of it.
I'm going to go against the grain. The three of you all said keep him. Personally, I'd be inclined to loan the lad out. I think if we qualify for Europe, we're going to see an influx of players in the summer, and those players are going to have to be at such a standard for us to be able to cope with what you call it the demands of Europe. I just worry that if we did keep him, he might be massively restricted next season in terms of game time. And I would be of the opinion that he needs game time at the minute to continue developing. So for me, I'm thinking if we do qualify for Europe, I think we ought to be loaning him out. As I say, I'm going against the grain here. I just think, as I say, game time is going to be critical for his development over the course of the next few years. And I don't think he'll get it at Newcastle next season if we qualify for Europe and we bring in 4, 5, 6 players.
You never said it if we qualified for Europe.
Ah, right, okay.
Sorry.
Fair point. If we qualify for Europe?
Oh, no, we want new players.
Right.
Would you not keep him as a backup now? Would you not
Sorry?
keep him though, just in case as a backup?
Depends who we buy in.
I don't think we're going to get as many players in that would need to cover that many positions next season. I think we're 2 seasons away from having that kind of a squad.
Don't forget as well, with Europe, you're going to have homegrown players in that squad too. So the players like Longstaff and Anderson are going to have to stick around if they are club grown players. They're probably going to need to be in and around the squad for when you do get into Europe.
Does that have to be club grown or homegrown? Because the
Homegrown.
rule is homegrown.
You've got to have both. You've got to have so many homegrown players. So obviously England trained, and then you've got to have, I think it's at least 4 who have come through the club, and they've had at least, is it 3 years or something since they were, or up to the age of 21. They've had to be at the club at least 3 years before then. So you have to, in that squad of 25, you've got to have at least 4 that are Newcastle grown players.
Bloody hell, that stumps us a bit, doesn't it?
Keep him then.
Scrap your answer, Lee.
Yeah, it was never in doubt. Keep him. I was just testing you. On the subject of Friday night, before we wrap up on Friday night, the VAR decision. Fucking Jesus wept. I just want to get people's thoughts on this. I mean, from my view in the stand, I genuinely thought that the only reason it went to VAR because the fullback, when Anderson's challenged him, he's gone into him with a bit of force, but it wasn't a foul. He just wanted the ball more. And when that player stayed down for donkeys. He was down for a good 2 minutes and what have you. And I think Tierney was making sure he was okay, but the Forest players got in Tierney's face and started. I don't know whether they started planting seeds of doubt in his mind and whether he's then gone to the fella at Stockley Park and asked questions and what have you. But I genuinely thought the only reason it could have been given, he was looking at it, was for a foul, which I never for a million years thought was going to be given. And when he walked over towards the monitor, I was like, just what were your thoughts on it, Ash? The whole farce with Paul Tierney, the fat little twat.
I was just going to say, get that bleep machine ready because I'm going to go fucking nuts here. It doesn't matter how many times I watch that incident, how many times I see the replays, the different angles, the excuses, everything. I cannot get my head around how a professional referee can go to that monitor, have a look at that, and come to the conclusion that Felipe has deliberately played the ball and played Sean Longstaff into an offside position, and then miss the fact that another fucking defender kicks it again off of Sean Longstaff. So, like, 2 Forest defenders have played that ball before Longstaff becomes active. It's absolute horseshit. It's the worst decision I've seen all season. I've had nightmares about it. I'm going to counselling, and I'm fucking giving up football for life.
The Forest players actually lined up for the kickoff. They genuinely thought it was a goal. They didn't for a second think there was any danger of that being chalked off. I would love to have been a fly on the wall, Simon, in your house when it was disallowed. What was the reaction?
I was very calm and
Really?
collected. Yeah, I was raging. I haven't seen enough highlights for it to kind of make sense. I'm still confused. I was watching again this morning, and I'm still confused why it was VR. I think what I don't know when the referees go and have a look on the monitor is what angles are they looking from? Like, how many different viewpoints are they looking at, and how long? Is it in slow motion, real time? I don't know, because I can't get my head around how they came to that conclusion. So I've just calmed down. So yeah.
I think in terms of the angles, I think a referee goes to the monitor there, he should be shown every single angle that they've got VAR have got access to. I mean, a good example was earlier in the season, Crystal Palace at home, when Joe Willox literally pushed into the Crystal Palace keeper. The referee went to VAR to look at it, and the angle that showed the clear push, he wasn't showing it, and he disallowed the goal. For me, they've got to be shown every single available angle to allow them to make an informed decision. And let's be fair, half of them still couldn't, in what you call it, get to the right decision if they tried. Is it the worst decision you've seen this season, Mark?
Probably not the worst, but it's not far off. I think the general consensus throughout the chat, throughout everything we've seen, is sort of Gibbo says here. Not one person has said they agree with the decision. It was a shocker. I think from what I've seen, that there's at least 22 cameras at Premier League grounds. That's not counting the goal line technology ones as well. So they've got plenty of angles to be able to look at it. But more than anything, it's not the camera angles for this. It's the law. It's the laws of the game. We looked at it the other day. Law 11 clearly states if the player deliberately plays the ball, and it wasn't just one player. I can almost make an argument for them saying Felipe just sticks a leg out to kind of just block the ball away, which you could argue isn't a deliberate play. But then the second Forest player goes to clear the ball. So at that point, there's two, and it's just a shocking decision, and just one of many this season from the officials. It's not good. The standard of officiating in the Premier League has just dropped absolutely off a cliff, because they're just awful and too reliant on VAR. They're not willing to make decisions on their own. The linesmen are terrified of putting their flag up when players are clearly offside. The referees won't make a decision on fouls because they know they're backed up, so they're not willing to use their own initiative or their own knowledge of the game to be able to make decisions. It's just ridiculous, and that was just the tip of the iceberg. It was just a shocking decision, and robbed the kid of his first goal for the club.
There was only one camera angle needed.
Yeah,
one camera angle needed for that. I think the referees and Stockley Park between them have done a disservice to Felipe, because that was quite decent centre-half player to put himself in that position, to make the clearance, and then Ayew obviously followed it up and blasted it into Sean Longstaff. But I am interested, Mark, if you're saying that's not the worst decision you've seen this season, I'm going to absolutely ask you to nail your colours to the mast here and tell me what was worse than that.
You've already mentioned it, Joe Willox.
Joe Willox, yeah.
Joe Willox was the worst decision I've seen this season, and certainly in a Newcastle perspective. It's as blatant a push as you'll see. How they've looked at it and just gone, no, it's him jumping into the goal. I don't understand at what point they went, well, what purpose would he have to jump into the goalkeeper at that point? So that's the worst for me, absolutely. But yeah, this is a very, very close second. I want to just just jump into some of the comments as well, because they've been flooding in. Sorry, we haven't kind of got to a lot of them, so I apologise for that as well. There's one from Carl, where have I seen it? So yeah, this one, the picture of the Ford Geordie Place celebrate was met. It was an exceptional moment. It's just absolutely a shame that it never stood. Where else are we? I've lost one. I was looking for one before. Chris is much better at doing this than me. So he picks up where they are. There's an interesting one from Alan here, and it's just a quick round sort of the table. It's kind of off topic a little bit, but 3 teams to go down just quickly.
Oh. Bournemouth.
Yeah.
Southampton. and me head says Palace, but my heart says Everton. I'm so desperate for Everton to get relegated. Yeah, so unfortunately, as I said, Bournemouth, Southampton, and Palace, but I'd love Everton to replace one of them.
Simon?
I just want Everton.
Anybody, including Everton, that's a good one.
Yes. And Forest is a close second.
Ash?
Well, I can't say Everton because my podcast co-host might be lurking in the comments, and I'll never hear the end of it if they've been an Evertonian. So I'm going to say, well, we did league predictions yesterday, and my bottom three that ended up going down was Southampton, Bournemouth, and West Ham, which was bizarre. And I did that. I did that predictor twice, and West Ham went down both times. So I might just stick with that.
Funnily enough, I have the same three because I did similar thing in terms of predictions of the league, and yeah, I got those three. I genuinely think as West Ham are in that funk of not being able to pick up results when they need
It's
to.
got a shitty run in as well,
and then some of the others have got. Yeah, I was going to say, you've got better games and have picked up results, and I just think they're gonna really struggle to get out of it. I think Everton, unfortunately, have just started to play a little bit better over recent weeks and will pick up a few results where they need to, but West Ham would be a huge one for them to go down.
Winning the Conference League and relegated in the same season, potentially.
Oh,
no, that would be funny.
They're right in that. They know how to win in that Conference League, don't they? Yeah, it's a good point.
Absolutely.
Leicester get relegated so we can get Maddison on the cheap. I think Mr. Curry would agree with that. Mr. Curry is Madison's fanboy. Yeah, he's fanboy, isn't he? So after the on the Mason's offside decision in the Arsenal game is the worst of the season. Which one was that? Am I missing something there? Have I had a brain fart and wiped it from my memory? Can anybody else remember?
I'm having the same problem.
Is that the one where the lines were just not even parallel?
I like they're drawing them on with chalk or a crayon or something like that. Quite possibly.
I mean, there's that one also Isak's against Liverpool. His second goal that got ruled out. That was bullshit.
I think we need 2 weeks to get over the anger of that goal being ruled out on Friday night. And as if by magic, we've got a 2-week break.
Look at that segue there.
Very handy.
Chris is sacked.
So we're going to move on and talk a little bit about our international mags. Let me get it out on the open. I fucking hate international breaks. All international breaks do is they stop real football from taking place. They do. You can snarl at me all you want, Simon. It's fine. I'm sorry, but Sven Botman next week is playing Gibraltar. Gibraltar, for fuck's sake. What is the point? There's no point. It's a waste of time, waste of effort, puts our players at risk. Shouldn't happen. I'm sorry. Anyway, that's my rant out of the way. We've got a number of players who are off on international duty, including, I will mention, Simon, your favourite, Jeff Hendrick, still registered Newcastle player, called up for the Republic of Ireland. But we've got...
How desperate are Republic of Ireland for players, by the way, if they're calling up Jeff Hendrick and Jamal Lewis, who hasn't kicked the ball in like 20 years?
Well, Lewis has been called up for Northern Ireland, hasn't he? Not the Republic.
Not Republic, yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, and Lewis is actually...
I'm going to get shot now, aren't I?
Lewis is actually deemed to be Northern Ireland's most valuable footballer at this moment in time. I saw that quite recently, which doesn't say a lot for the state of Northern Irish football. Apparently he's worth 10 million. That's Northern Ireland's most valuable footballer. But on the subject of international breaks, Ash, you seem like you're in the same boat as me. Tell me your thoughts on the next couple of weeks and what you're hoping to get or not get from it.
All I want is for all of our players to come back unscathed. I've got no interest in watching what's going on. I know it's qualifiers and I should give a shit, but I don't. We've just had a World Cup. We could have had a bit more time before we had any more international bullshit. So, no, I'm not happy. What the hell's wrong with Simon? All right, okay. Yeah, it's just come at a stupid time. Couldn't have come at a worse time for Newcastle off the case of like 2 wins back to back. Now it's going to ruin our momentum again. But no, generally speaking, international breaks are shit. So as long as everyone comes back fit, I don't care.
I think I was quite pleased when Bruno wasn't selected for the Brazilian team. Joe Linton's time will come. He will get called up at some point. Wilson, obviously, struggling to get in our side at the minute, so he was never going to be picked for England. Nick Pope, I don't know whether that is a tactical withdrawal potentially, or whether he is actually carrying a knock. And I'm not devastated that Miggy has also been pulled out because he'd have been travelling halfway around the world. Trippier obviously has been picked for England. Simon, do you expect him to get many minutes in the games against Italy and the Ukraine?
I'm a Netherlands fan. I don't know.
All right, so is Botman going to be playing then against France?
I think Botman will not start against France, but he'll start against Gibraltar.
So we could have a carpenter, or a candlestick maker who could break the leg of our best centre half, and you still think that international football is a good thing? Come back at me with that.
Right, okay. The reason why it's not the Nations League, it's the European qualifiers. Okay, I'm sorry, but if you're going to do football, you do football. And whilst I love my club, do you know what I mean? I do love internationals because this is where you see upcoming talent come through and you see them flourish. So for Botman, whether he starts or not is another thing. Bearing in mind, there's certain players like even like Gravenberch hasn't been called up, and he's amazing. So, there's no guarantee he's going to start. The fact that he's in with the others, it's amazing progress because he was ignored by Van Gaal for so many.
Yeah.
Like every time we had a match, he just got ignored. So for me, I'm happy he's there. And I think Coleman's not going to be reckless. I really don't think so. And how about Gibraltar? As if they're going to touch any of have you seen Sven Botman? He's Raj. He's not going to let it happen, I promise.
Yeah, but what happens if he comes up against a centre forward like Billy Whitehurst, who's nothing more than a glorified hod carrier, who just wants to make a name for himself? Listen,
to be honest, I think in terms of the Dutch squad, though, there's more, no disrespect to Botman, but there's bigger names in that squad. So if if those players want to make a name for themselves by going in with the difficult tackles or whatever, you've got the likes of Depay, you've got Van Dijk, you've got Virgil. Do you know what I mean? There's more experienced players on the pitch than Botman, so I don't think he'll be a target. But with any internationals, there's a risk of injuries. There's always going to be a risk of injuries, and I do wonder about his confidence because it was his mistake that allowed the Forest goal, didn't it?
Yeah.
He lost the ball. It was that one moment of I don't know what happened, but who knows?
Yeah, I mean, I just have this irrational fear of Trippier, Isak, and Botman getting injured whilst on international duty, and it just screwing the rest of our season. I mean, touch wood, it's not going to happen, but I look at fixtures against the likes of Gibraltar, and I look at fixtures that Isak's playing Azerbaijan next week, and I'd much rather go away for the experience with the squad and what have you, but please, God, let the managers rest them for those non-entity games sort of thing. We've got Garang Kual heading off to Australia to play Ecuador twice. That's a fair old trek. It is. It'll take him 2 weeks to get there and back, I would have thought, something along those lines. Mark, thoughts on the international break? Expectations?
I mean, I'm going to disagree with you. I like international football. I really do. I side with Simon in this. I really enjoy it. I get the argument about the small nations, and we've had this conversation before. Sort of, I think on our previous guys of the podcast where we talked about the San Marino game for England, seeing what's the point, but how do you grow those nations if they're just going to be shielded away from the bigger sides? How do they learn how to play against the big teams? And to be fair to Botman, how much time are Gibraltar going to spend in the Dutch half? It's not going to be an awful lot. I don't think he's going to have an awful lot to do. I think he can pretty much sit down with a Bielsa bucket for most of the game and just enjoy a rest. So I think the same as everyone else. You want everybody to come back. You want everybody to come back fit, but you want them to get the experience of playing with maybe some of the bigger players that they've got around them. You know, the likes of Botman and Isak will learn an awful lot from the players around them. Isak, especially from being in and around with Zlatan more. Botman again, you know, he's probably not going to learn an awful lot from Van Dijk this season because Van Dijk's not got anything to show for himself this year. But he's still a quality player, and he will learn from him. So it's you're getting that experience out of them and going to play it in bigger games. This is what you want for your younger players while they're still sort of learning their way at Newcastle as well. They're not playing in the higher profile games just yet. You want some of this. So I do enjoy it. But like everybody, I want everybody to come back fit and ready to go for games when the Premier League kicks off again.
I do think your point about it's how these nations develops a really good one. All joking aside, I remember probably mid-80s, England played Turkey, I think, a few times in qualifiers. And those games were seen as gimmies, very, very similar to games that you get against the likes of San Marino these days. And I remember England going away to Istanbul and just it was like what we call a Premier League team against a Northern Premier League team, for example. England knocking 8 past their goalkeeper and not thinking twice about it. And if you look at how Turkey have progressed since that period, all the way through to now, where quite recently they've finished, I think, in 3rd place in a major tournament, it is a fair point. But I'll tell you, I love international football in a fortnight's time when they're all back and they're all safe and they're all ready to line up on the 2nd of April. What are you chuckling at again now, Seema? Other players we've got on international duty. We've got, as I said, Duran Quol for Australia. We've got Jamal Lewis. Martin Dubravka's got a couple of games for Slovakia. But I'd like to make a shout out to Johnny Emerson, who's had his first call up for Scotland under-18s, and Lewis Miley, who's been called up to the England under-17s team. Lewis Miley was in the stands on Friday night. He was down at Wembley a few weeks ago. I bumped into him down there. So good luck to those two lads as they look to make their debut for their respective countries. So whilst we're off on our 2-week international break, Eddie has flown off to Dubai with his international mags. Chance for the lads to recharge the batteries. Bruno, for example, I think if you look at his socials, has been off to the Maldives for a couple of days. Did anybody see his photographs with his magic hat on? Joe Linton, I think, has gone somewhere similar. I think
he's in Brazil.
Is he in Brazil? Is he?
Brazil, yeah.
I'm hopeful that this international break has a similar sort of impact to the one that we had last January, immediately after the Leeds game. We went to Saudi for 2 weeks, obviously got a lot of stick for it because of the circumstances where we were going and what have you. But when we came back from Saudi, we won 5 out of 6 and basically set ourselves up for the rest of the season. Simon, what do you think we're going to be looking to get out of it over the course of the next couple of weeks, the break?
I think with previous managers, we never used to do that. We used to just let the players go away and then come back. I think what it shows is that he's determined and he's bringing all the players together and he's working on the squad and he's constantly going to be focused on how do we then look at the Man United game, because that is going to be our first game after the international break. So for me, it's only a positive because previous managers never, ever used to think, okay, international break, see you in a bit, pals, do you know? I think it's very good to take them away from the area. They still get a bit of rest, they still get a bit of sunshine, but it's still focusing on football. I think it's it's Chris in the messages. Sorry. He's put Bruce took the lads to Skegness. I'm sorry.
Just while Simon composes herself, Ash, how important do you think it was that we headed off to Dubai on the back of 2 wins?
Definitely stark contrast to last year when we were going in the back of not a losing run where we were starting to pick up points at that point, but that trip was the catalyst for the run that we went on after. So I don't know. I think it'll be mad to expect a similar kind of result this time around, but going there off the back of 2 wins is definitely going to be a good thing. We're going to go in there with confidence this time, where it's like last time we were sort of wavering a little bit. I think the key to this one is getting Wilson's head right. Whatever's going on with him, whether the rumours going around social media are true or what, I don't know, don't care. That's nothing to do with how he plays football. But something needs to be done with him over there. You've got 2 weeks to sort him out, get him back over here playing football like he was back in October, November. So that for me has got to be the biggest thing to look at for us over there.
I think team morale is something that Howe is massively interested in. He always talks about in his presses. Can we mute Curry, please, Mark? just for the last 5. But I think as much as preparation for Man United, I think Howe sees it as an opportunity to bring the squad together in terms of, as I say, team bonding and what's have you. And you could see that, and I think we've got a squad and a togetherness that a lot of Premier League clubs probably look at quite enviously, because one thing I think we'd all agree on, there is a togetherness on the pitch. Every man fighting for each other, mad dog on the sidelines doing the same and what have you. So from a team morale, team bonding point of view, I think it's absolutely massive. Mark, thoughts?
Yeah, I'm just thinking you don't want the result you had when you came back from Dubai last year, because you walked straight into a 5-1 defeat at Spurs, didn't you? So you don't want to come back to that. I can't.
That was the later break, though, wasn't it? Was that the March break as well?
It was the March break, so it was sort of this time. So you don't want that to kind of happen again. But having said that, you kind of gone into that break on the back of 2 defeats, and then from that point on, it was 6 wins out of 8. So it sort of helped that. Get that Spurs game out of the way, and then it was kick on to the end of the season. So it had its advantages, and I think you're going in on a high. I think the mood has changed a little bit from the previous games, where that run of draws and sort of drab games, and you've had 2 games where they've played exceptionally well. They've created lots of chances. I know it's not the greatest stat in the world, but their XG has been higher over the last 2 games, so they're making better chances and taking them as well. I mean, 2 goals in each game over the last 2 is a stark improvement over recent weeks. So it's a good time to get everybody together. It gives you a little bit of a chance to get Gordon closer to being back in the squad again with his knock. Miggy doesn't miss as many games if he's out for 6 weeks, so it's a little bit of a blessing in that regard, and the others get to have a bit of a rest. So the likes of Bruno and Joe Linton have gone away on holiday just to recharge for a few days, and I think that's a really good move from them and the club to allow them just to have that time. The interesting story I picked up from this whole thing was that St Maximin seemed to have travelled to Dubai but wasn't with the squad to start with.
I don't know. Helios in a shopping centre somewhere.
I was going to say that's possibly the thing. So I expect he'll be back in with the squad after a couple of days or something. But that was an interesting take. There didn't seem to be anything about why, but he travelled, but he wasn't going to be with them for the first couple of days. So, but yeah, I like this sort of thing. I like the fact that the club are doing this. They're not just going to Skegness, as Chris has said. They're not going to fill themselves with kebabs and sausage rolls and all kinds of stuff. They're doing it properly. And the facilities, as Eddie's put in his comments, were a first class over there. So they're going to get the best treatment. That do some altitude sort of stuff in. They've got some altitude tech and stuff that they use for them as well, which I think the players really, really enjoyed last year. And it kind of gets them back into that mentality. They can refocus again and then go for these last 12 games and spend 2 weeks really kind of focusing on beating Manchester United and getting back and getting one over them for the cup final defeat, really.
Yeah, I don't think you can understate and underplay the importance of going into the break with the 2 wins. I think had we lost, for example, on Friday night, the players that are in Dubai now would have been there under a bit of a cloud. They've been kicking the heels. That have just been sat there thinking, I just want to get back on the pitch. I just want to put it right and what have you. And it could have had a bit of a negative impact on them. This way, they've literally danced into that summer camp over in Dubai, what you call, they'll all be in good spirits. And hopefully, as I say, from a team bonding point of view, it has a really good effect. Just coming up to 55 minutes, so we'll wrap up in a minute. I want to ask each of you one question, though, on the subject of summer breaks. And in the interests of solidarity with our 6-fingered friends down the A19, if we were going to advise Tony Mowbray on where he should take Sunderland's squad on a mid-season break, Ash, where would you send them?
Jesus, what a weird question. Take them to Skegness. It worked for Bruce, didn't it?
Send them to Skegness, yeah?
Yeah, just it might be out of their price range, but we'll chip in. We'll start at just giving for them.
Any ideas, Mark?
I was going to say Bognor, somewhere like that, somewhere pretty crappy, or Southend, or I don't know, Hartlepool.
Hartlepool. That's a
Hartlepool.
I'm not going to mention any hanging animals or anything along those lines. I don't want to offend people. Shit, I might have just done that inadvertently. Yeah?
Apologies to anybody from Hartlepool in the comments. Yeah.
Simon, come on. Where's Tony Mowbray taking them?
Borough.
You're taking them to Middlesbrough?
Yeah.
And signing them, and they're all signing for Middlesbrough.
In the smog and the gloriousness of the smog.
Taking them out for a palm.
Just apologise on behalf of the podcast for any viewers from Middlesbrough as well whilst we're on there.
We send them to Scarborough.
No. You can get right on your bike, I tell you, before you even consider it. Jesus.
Never thought of that.
Scarborough's far too nice for those, I tell you.
It's a bit upper class, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Right. Listen, I think we'll wrap it up at that. 58 minutes in. I didn't set the house on fire, didn't burn the place down, I don't think, anyway. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Mark, I'll pop it up there again. Mark, Simon, Ash, thanks ever so much for your time tonight. And don't forget, keep supporting that team we call United.
Cheers, guys. Have a good night.
Guys.
You're all sorry for the flightiness.